What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the FPL Game Week 31 preview. And there is a lot of stuff to be talking about this week. We've got rotation for Man City, rotation for Liverpool. We've got Wolves defence. People are worried about Chelsea defence. West Ham without Rice, without potentially Antonio as well. There's lots to talk about. We're going to get through it all. I've gone through your topics and questions that you put to me on YouTube and on Twitter. So please do give it a like if you enjoy it. Hit subscribe if you're new around here, and let's jump into it. Okay, so we're going to start with Man City, and not just looking at who might be rotated, etc. But I'm also going to talk about what potentially we could do with these players or what to start thinking about. And I've got a feeling there's going to be 7 game weeks left after this week. Probably going to speak about Man City rotation for at least 7 of them, I expect. So I've already gone through their fixture list already for all competitions before in a previous game week preview, but let's just quickly remind ourselves. So they've got Leeds in game week 31. We all know about that. It looks like an enticing fixture. That's on the 10th of April. They've got 3 full days of rest then in between till their next game, which is the Champions League quarter-final. So they're going to get the 11th, 12th, 13th off completely, and obviously a bit of time on the 10th, a bit of time on the 14th. That's how I'm working it out. Champions League quarter-final. Then before they even play another Premier League game, they got the FA Cup quarter-final. Only 2 days of rest. Full days of rest between the Champions League and the FA Cup. Then it's 3 days of rest. It's another 2 days of rest. 3 days of rest even until game week 32, which is Villa. But then not long after that, they got the EFL Cup final to come, and then it's game week 34 on the 1st of May, because they're not playing in game week 33. We know that they blank. The thing is, if they get through the Champions League, there's going to be another Champions League game between the EFL Cup final and game week 34. I probably should have put that on screen. So we could be looking at game week 31, Champions League, FA Cup 32, EFL Cup, Champions League, game week 34. So they could have 2 matches in between their next couple of game weeks that aren't anything to do with Premier League, right? So first of all, there's going to be rotation. We know that. Man City rotate all the time anyway. Pep Guardiola has already said he's going to have to rotate to compete in all these competitions, and they have the squad to do it. So first of all, could we sell all our Man City players? I think we possibly could, right? Diaz was someone I didn't talk too much about in the wildcard guide. He's probably the only defender you could rely on to possibly start maybe 5 of these next 6 games, potentially all 6. So he probably is the best defender. If you had him, you probably don't have to sell him, right? It's Leeds, then it's Villa, then it's Palace. So the fixtures are quite good, apart from obviously game week 33 when they blank. But deciding who's going to play is impossible, right? None of the outfield players, right, are going to start, I would say, apart from maybe Diaz, right, are going to start all 6 of these. So then we're already trying to find patterns. So De Bruyne started against Leicester, then he started in the Champions League midweek. Is he now going to play all 6 of them? No. Where's he going to get his rest? I would say he's either getting it this week against Leeds, or he's getting it against Aston Villa, right? I think he has to play the next Champions League quarter-final. He will probably play the FA Cup semi-final as well. He's got to play the EFL Cup final too. So at some point he has to miss out. And if they do have another Champions League game after the EFL Cup final, he's going to play that as well, right? So if they get through to the semi-finals, De Bruyne, if he's not injured, will definitely play. So for me, there's no way he can also play game week 31 and 32 as well. And therefore, if you've got him, potentially it's not the worst time to sell him. I'm not saying you have to do it, because if he plays versus Leeds, there's lots of points potential there. How the original game or the reverse fixture only ended up 1-1, I do not know. But I just don't see him playing both the next game. So you're kind of taking a gamble over which one it might be, right? And there's probably more you can do with your money. And in game week 32, a lot of people are going to look towards Spurs for captaincy anyway. Bruno Fernandes, if you don't own him, has Burnley, then Leeds. You can maybe use that money to fund it to Vardy or whatever it might be. So I guess the only thing is, if you keep him for this week and you've got a good backup and he doesn't play, there's a chance that he plays against Villa. But I'll tell you now, when you get to game week 32, you're going to be having this exact same conversation in your head about whether or not he will start. Now, Gundogan is exactly the same. The only difference is, and what I've got written on screen is, who I've said rested, call it rotated, whatever you want. Gundogan didn't play versus Leicester. Neither did Foden. Neither did Cancelo. Neither did Sterling or Stones. Now, all of those players, apart from Sterling, then played in the Champions League, right? So I think Foden probably misses out against Leeds, probably. Stones might miss out. Laporte might come back in. There's definitely, right, one of Aguero or Jesus is going to start this game. Originally, I thought definitely Aguero, but I think Jesus kind of has to. Feel like he's got the legs to play against a team like Leeds. We might even see both of them start. We saw that against Fulham, and neither De Bruyne nor Gundogan started. The question I'm asking myself as a Gundogan owner, and I know a lot of people have them, if we think he plays this because he got rested versus Leicester, where does he then get rested? Because I feel like he's almost as important as De Bruyne. So then they have to rest him in one of Champions League quarterfinal, FA Cup, game week 32. And if they don't rest him till game week 32, that means he's played 4 games in a row, and then he's getting rested in game week 32. So it could happen. I feel like with Gundogan, the only kind of good thing is, or better thing than De Bruyne, he's a lot less money. He's not eating up as much as your budget. So if I had to put money on who's going to start this week, I would say Gundogan ahead of De Bruyne, but I could be completely wrong. The way Leeds are going to play, De Bruyne leading from the front with that press is brilliant. He did it against Dortmund yesterday. He can do it against Leeds. So we just don't know. In my opinion, it's not the worst time to sell them. I know I've talked about upside chasing a bit, right? And this feels like a good game to do it, right? Sterling hasn't played the last 2. Surely he plays against Leeds. Not guaranteed, of course, because this is Pep, this is Man City. But there is a chance that he plays against Leeds. He could be a 1-week punt. I wouldn't force it. Right? I've seen people on Twitter talking about Ferran Torres, right? Jesus captains, Aguero captains. It feels forced when Salah is playing Aston Villa, Jota against Aston Villa, for example. There's other players you can go to this week for captaincy. You don't necessarily have to risk it on a City player. You could just get the City player in and not captain them, but I guess it's not such an upside chase, right? And even Mahrez, he was one that people thought was going to get rested in the Champions League and play against Leeds, and even that's not guaranteed now. So for me, as long as they stay in all these competitions, we're going to continue to have this problem. The best bet we can have is for them to get through the FA Cup, get knocked out by Chelsea. Don't know if that will happen. Get rid of the AFL Cup final. Obviously, that will get played. But what I mean is they won't have that to worry about. And Dortmund to knock them out. If Dortmund knock them out, then it gets a little bit easier. We cannot... But it's not going to happen, right? They're probably going to win. We cannot forget they haven't yet won the league, so it's not going to. I don't think we're going to see like 11 players get rotated. It's why I think one of Gundogan and De Bruyne will play, but they are slightly different players, right? I don't think Gundogan can press from the front like De Bruyne can. Okay, he plays a little bit deeper. So for me, I think if you haven't got a free hit for 33, you're not going to use that free hit. It might not be the worst time to start selling them. I know the Leeds game looks so enticing. But having this constant worry about rotation, it hurts, right? You just don't want this kind of added pressure to your moves every single week. The upside's huge, don't get me wrong. Leeds, Villa, Palace, great fixtures. But with a blank in 33, you can probably justify selling them, especially when you're not going to captain in 32 ahead of a Spurs player. Obviously, if you want to keep them for this week, fine. Hope they start against Leeds. But after that, it's possibly time to get rid. Let me know below what are you doing, Man City players. So a bit like the Man City conversation, this isn't just about what will the rotation be like and what do their fixtures look like. I want to talk about Liverpool players in general as well, because a lot of people are looking to bring them in for their fixture swing, and obviously there are some worries about rotation. A lot of people are comparing them to Man City, right, because they're in the Champions League. But I think there's a massive, massive, massive difference between the two, right? First of all, Man City can definitely afford to rotate. They have a much better squad, right? Liverpool have some depth, but it's not to the same quality as Man City. Man City have just beaten Leicester and Dortmund, and Raheem Sterling hasn't even played, right? Or he hasn't started, at least. I don't think he came on, but I could be wrong. It's not the same for Liverpool. If they rest Mane or Salah, okay, Jota can come in, but if he starts with all 4 of them, then it's like Shaqiri, it's Milner in midfield. These aren't bad players, I'm not saying they are, but it's not the same as Man City. So that's it, first of all. Also, they're not in the FA Cup, they're not in the EFL Cup final. So straight away, you can see their fixture run is much kinder, and they have plenty of rest in between games. So game week 31 this week against Villa, 3 days rest till their quarter final, and then they get 4 days rest until game week 32. So then another 3 days. It's another 4 days rest till game week 33, etc. You see where I'm going with this. Now, obviously, if they get through the Champions League, they will have an extra fixture to add in here for the semi-finals. But the fact they're 3-1 down makes me think they're probably going to get knocked out to Real Madrid. I just don't see them making this great comeback. And I know I say that knowing what they've done the last year or so, right? I fully get that. But it's just a different time with Liverpool right now. I'm just not sure they've quite got that in them. No Van Dijk, no Henderson, etc. So I don't see that happening. But obviously that's all speculation, right, for next week. The other thing is, I think the train of thought now goes to the fact, well, he's going to rest them up so that they're fit and ready for that comeback. But I think actually you probably need a win against Villa. Get that morale back up. Get Salah shooting or scoring. Get Mane scoring, etc. to go into that Real Madrid game full of confidence. You don't want to say, well, you lost. Now you're not playing. And now you've got to play again against that really tough team, Real Madrid. So I don't think they're actually going to rest players this week. And if they get knocked out, absolutely fine going forward. So I'm not really worried about Liverpool players at all. Also, because of the way the league table is, they're only 3 points behind West Ham now. I know Everton have got a game in hand, so if they win, they will go ahead of Liverpool. But I think Liverpool now are probably one of the favourites to get that top 4 spot because their fixtures are so good. Man City can kind of concentrate on the Champions League because they have the squad and they have the points ahead of Man United already. Liverpool don't have that. They need top 4. You can't rely on winning the Champions League to get back into the Champions League next season. So I'm not too worried. Just really quickly on players. I think Salah looks great for the run-in. I think, we have this Salah-Mane conversation, not too much this season, but we did at the start of the season, last season, etc. In my opinion, there's no competition right now. Salah's the top scorer. He's on penalties. Mane just doesn't look on it. His underlying stats are good, but he hasn't been putting the ball in the back of the net, and he just hasn't looked confident in front of goal. And I've seen a lot of people speculating that Firmino might start the next game, and it could be Salah and Jota with Mane just getting a rest, basically. I don't know whether that will definitely happen, but there's just no reason to go for Mane. With Trent, it's an interesting one because the fixtures are great, but Liverpool haven't been great defensively, and we know that Real Madrid targeted him. But Real Madrid targeting a player is not the same as Newcastle, for example. I mean, they could try that against Trent, but I think they'd have a much tougher time, right? Liverpool would hold more of the ball, etc. Against Real Madrid, that's much tougher to do. So I'm not worried about Trent being targeted and their defence being poor because the fixtures in the league are much easier. You could say the next two, Villa and Leeds, are actually quite difficult to keep clean sheets. So you could put your Trent transfer off, but I quite like him right now because he's such a differential. And I've already spoken about Jota a bit this week on videos. I just think his minutes, yes, they're going to be limited compared to others, but I think his value when he plays is so high and the fixtures are so good. And I also think they have to kind of play him, right? I just think Firmino's a good player and he does help control the game for Liverpool. But I don't necessarily think they need that all the time in the league like they maybe do in the Champions League. So I still think Jota's a great pick. I'm not worried about rotation. I think the fixtures look good and that fight for top 4 is definitely on. And that is going to be one of the priorities for Liverpool. Yes, it'd be nice to win the Champions League. That's looking difficult. Top 4 has to be done for Liverpool. They cannot go into next season without Champions League football. So after conceding 3 goals to West Ham, I've seen quite a few people now, I would say, put off by Wolves defenders, right? Not necessarily convinced because of the fixtures, etc. and the price. I would say, whether you're making a decision for a transfer or a wild card this week, try not to make it based on one game week, right? If you thought Wolves defence was good before the West Ham game, the West Ham game shouldn't completely put you off. I'm not saying you shouldn't question bad results, changes in tactics, changes in strategy, personnel, etc. But I wouldn't let him massively sway your decision. If you're saying, great fixtures, pretty good defence, I want them, well, they conceded 3 to West Ham. Now they're no good. They're never going to keep a clean sheet again. It tends to not work like that, I would say, in FPL, in football, etc. The 4 main contenders, I would say, Saiss, Bolly, Cody, Semedo. Now, Bolly has tested positive for COVID, so we'll have to wait and see if he's fit to come back for next week, or not fit, but whether he's allowed. There's all kind of, now he has to self-isolate, and I'm not completely sure on how long that's going to be for, so we'll have to wait and see what Nuno says. Now, I'm not talking about that because I think Bolly's a good option, because I think 5.4 million is just too expensive, but him missing out would put me off Wolves' defence a little bit more than when he's playing, right? I don't want to see this back 4, I want to see a back 5. The other issue is Johnny is now injured, right? Now, before the West Ham game, we didn't know that. I believe the news came out before that game. So him being out, that means that Nuri's got to play there, or they might play Saiss there and play Kilman left centre-back, whatever it might be. But that's not good to have that disruption. So that might be another thing that slightly puts you off. But looking at the stats, right? So on screen, I've got, this is per match on average for the whole season. So expected goals conceded, and then non-penalty expected goals conceded. Now, I'm not going to go into which one's better, but it's kind of good to look at both to see where someone ranks. Because if someone's like 10th on expected goals conceded, but they're 4th on non-penalty. That just kind of shows that the defence is actually quite good, but they've given away a few too many penalties. That could be because their defenders are rash, or it could be because they just got a little bit unlucky and gave away more penalties than normal. Penalties aren't usually kind of stable in how often they're given. Sometimes you'll get loads and sometimes you won't, right? But in both situations for Wolves, they're 4th so far this season. I know that hasn't translated into FPL points, and maybe it won't for the rest of this season, but the defence has looked, by the numbers, pretty decent. And up until that West Ham game, I've said this already, or before on a few videos this week, Wolves had only conceded 1 goal max per game, apart from Man City, right back until game week 19. So they hadn't been massively leaking goals. That West Ham game, they were just all over the place. Lingard and Antonio just run them ragged. Back 4 just did not work. So we need Bolly back. We need them to go back to a back 5. So listen to what Nuno says this week. But going by fixtures, like Fulham, Sheffield United, Burnley, West Brom, are not good attacking teams. I know what West Brom did to Chelsea, but I wouldn't factor that into my decisions because, again, that's a bit of an anomaly. Brighton at home I've put as green, but that might be a little bit more difficult. So Fulham, Sheffield United, Burnley, definitely good. You don't even have to play this Wolves player every single week. You need to see how they fit into a rotation system with your other defenders. So use a transfer planner like on livefpl.net. See how often you have to play them, or how much you want to play them and which fixtures they are, and go from there. In terms of who to pick, I don't think I would go for Semedo. I don't think he's attacking enough to warrant the extra money. So it's Cody versus Saiss, right? And I've spoken about this a bit, so I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but Cody's absolutely nailed, and recently he's been shooting a bit more. We know how good Saiss is from set pieces, but I think the guarantee of minutes from Cody is probably where I would go. Plus, he's a little bit cheaper. So Cody's still my man. Saiss, if you want to go for a bit of a nostalgia pick, I don't mean that in a bad way in this instance because he is such a threat from set pieces, or has been in the past. But I would ignore Bolly and I would ignore Semedo, but I wouldn't necessarily ignore Wolves as long as they go back to a back 5. So when you're making your transfers this week, when you're thinking about Man City, Spurs, etc. over the next couple of weeks, it's probably worth starting to think about the game week 33 blank if you haven't been already. And I just wanted to do this image to kind of show you how I've been thinking about it, right? So obviously Tierney is out for 4 to 6 weeks, right? That's been announced today. That's not great. Obviously, I'm going to need to transfer him out. I might need to transfer Antonio too. The reason they've not got crosses or circles is because they're probably going to be gone from my team, and they'll probably be replaced by players that do play in Game Week 33. So I'm not worried about them right now. The players with crosses don't play. They have a blank game week. The players with circles around are not necessarily going to start. Now, really, I could have put that around Rudiger as well, but Rudiger is part of Chelsea's first 11, or best 11, I would say. Dan Burn's been missing out. I don't know if he's going to get back in, and Fabry's obviously no good, but Martinez plays against West Brom, so I'm fine. So straight away, right, even if I got rid of both my Man City players for Game Week 33 players, I still have to bench Kane and Son. So then I've got whoever replaces Antonio, Bamford, Rafinha, my 2 replacements for Man City plus Salah, so that's 6, plus my goalkeeper is Martinez is 7. Then I've got to play 4 other players, which are all going to have to be defenders. Now, as it stands, that's Dawson, Dallas, Rudiger, and Tierney's replacement. Could be Trent, could be Azpilicueta, could be a Wolves defender. But Dawson plays Chelsea that week, and Dallas plays Man United. So I don't even have the ideal situation. So if you're wildcarding, or even if you're planning ahead, there's a few questions I would ask. Can your bench cover it? It's all well and good just flippantly saying, I'll just bench Kane and Son. I'll bench Gundogan as well. But who do you have coming on because of them? And it's not necessarily bad if the players you have coming on aren't great for that week, because you don't want to make massive transfer changes or transfer plan changes just to cover 1 week. But it's worth considering anyway. Could you make a different long-term strategy move to cover 33 and have better players going forward? It's one of the reasons I wanted Tierney. The fixtures were so good, right? What's the quality of the player? So again, it's all well and good. I've got Dan Burn on the bench. He can cover. Well, he's not playing, or he's not very good. He's not likely to keep a clean sheet, etc. Yeah, long-term transfers to be made. And how will you fund those moves, right? Because I was looking, for example, earlier about Gundogan to Grealish maybe in Game Week 33. But can I afford that, and how am I going to fund it? So I would start planning for this if you're not free hitting in Game Week 33. Just really quickly on that situation, there's probably going to be blanks in 36 and doubles in 35. It's all dependent on the FA Cup final and what the government does in terms of getting home fans or getting fans into stadiums for home matches. So I tweeted Ben Crellin about this, who's, you know, follow him on Twitter. He's always talking about blanks and doubles, etc. And I think with the FA Cup final matches being kind of blanks and then moved, that should cover off all the fans being able to get into at least one home game before the end of the season. We'll still have to wait and see if that happens, but there is a chance now, if you were planning to free hit in 33, it might be better to either free hit in 35, which is the double game week, potentially, and that could have Southampton versus Palace rearranged into it. It could have Everton versus Villa rearranged into it, whatever might happen. Or if your team's well set up for that, you could go for the blank in 36, depending on how it falls. Now, you might be thinking, well, why would I want Southampton? But I'm just looking up here on the FPL site. So Southampton, currently, it's Liverpool in game week 35, but they might also have the Crystal Palace game added in there as well. And if not, maybe if it moves to game week 37, then it would be Palace and Leeds. Whatever it might be, there's potential there for extra points, and there's potentially a reason to save your free hit. But either way, whether you're free hitting or not, start thinking about it, which players are missing out, and be realistic about how good your bench actually is and whether they're even likely to start. So here's some other questions that came up quite a bit. So Chelsea defence, right? People like, should we still go for them? I already said before that West Brom game that I didn't think a triple up was necessarily warranted, just because they don't have the greatest fixtures for the rest of the season. So when you want to come off them, having 3 is much harder to get rid of than just having 1 or 2. I wouldn't be massively put off. I would have a look at who plays in the Champions League tonight, because if it's Chilwell, Alonso might start again in the league. I think Rudiger, there's all this talk about him having a training ground bust up. That's done. Apparently he's going to start against Porto, so that should be fine as well. I think in general with Chelsea, right, Azpilicueta looks the most nailed. No one's played right centre-back so far. With Thiago Silva in the middle, he's kind of first choice, but obviously didn't have a great game against West Brom. And then Christensen is kind of his backup. And left centre-back is Rudiger with Zuma as the backup. But Rudiger is pretty much first choice in their best 11. Does it mean he'll play every game for the rest of the season? No, but he should play the majority, so I quite like him. If Chilwell misses out, you could take a punt on Alonso. But Azpilicueta is the one to go for, or Mendy in goal, and just hope that Kepa doesn't get a game before the end of the season. But their defence is so good. I'm not put off by that West Brom game at all. Would I triple up? No. Would I double up? Possibly. Would I get 1 in? Definitely. Vydra is an enabler. It's so funny because I think the official FPL account tweeted about Vydra, and there was like an article about how he might be an okay pick, and everyone slated them for it. And then he goes on and gets, I think it was a return or 2 over 2 game weeks, and now everyone's putting him in their wildcard drafts. Look, right now, he's played the last 6. Barnes is out injured. He's probably going to continue. He's been playing quite well. Dyche tends to keep players in when they're doing all right. He's 4.8 million. He's the cheapest playing striker as it stands. If you're making a draft with 7 attackers that you're going to play most weeks and you're happy with them, obviously you can transfer them out later on. That's how we usually play FPL. We don't usually have 8 playing attackers that are worth like 5.5 or 6 or above. Usually there's a bench fodder, right? There's like a 4.5 million midfielder, a 4.5 million striker. I don't see anything wrong with Vydra, but don't kind of pin all your hopes on him continuing to keep his place and also continuing to get attack and returns, because if they dry up or he gets subbed or he doesn't play, he doesn't start, I wouldn't be completely surprised. But right now, Burnley fans seem to think he's probably going to keep starting, and he's played well. West Ham without Rice and Antonio. Look, I think Antonio might be okay. If not this week, then the week after. We haven't heard any news on him yet, but he tends to come off when he feels his hamstring. Like any kind of, I don't know what I want to say. Like any kind of feeling with his hamstring, right? Because it's a precaution. They don't have another striker that can play there. They don't wait until it completely goes. So he might be okay. Bowen could play up front maybe. We'll have to wait and see what they do. Rice is a miss, but I think Noble played pretty well. And in general, West Ham are such a drilled, well-organised team right now. They probably can cope slightly without him. But what I will say is Wolves' defence kind of... I'm not saying Lingard was lucky, but Wolves' defence did help West Ham, right? Lingard played really well, and so did Antonio for the first kind of 30 he was on. They ran that defence ragged, and they were already ahead by like the first 10 or 14 minutes. So at that point, it didn't really matter that they didn't have Rice. That might be different in another game. So I would say West Ham are a worse team without him, But does that make Lingard bad value? Probably not. If anything, it probably makes the defenders worse, right? So we'll have to see how they cope. But Noble in that match played really well. Whether he can continue that for the rest of the games, we'll have to see. But I think Antonio will be back. If I had West Ham players already, I wouldn't panic. If I was considering them, I probably also wouldn't panic, to be honest. And could we hold Martinez? So I did a video with Az on Fantasy Football Scout earlier. He made a fairly good case. I think the thing with Martinez is even when he concedes, he's always got save points in his locker. So he concedes against Fulham, he still gets 4 points. He's got West Brom in 33, still got a double game week to come at some point. I don't think it's the worst call to hold him. Mendy, for example, as said, to be honest, he's either a 2-pointer or a 6-pointer. Very rarely gets saves. Patricio, Schmeichel, Lloris, they're all more expensive. So I don't think holding Martinez is the worst idea if you want to do it. If you're on a wild card, it's a little bit more difficult to justify that, I think. If you're not, then you could do it if you've got other transfers to make. Like for me, if I've got Antonio and Tierney injured this week, then Martinez is not my priority transfer. I'll just hold him. And if I hold him through this game, I probably hold him through 32. Hope that he can get one clean sheet in either of those games or at least a lot of saves. And then hopefully get a clean sheet against West Brom. So if you're thinking about doing it, don't be put off just because everyone on Wildcard's thinking about not having him. It doesn't mean you have to. The thing with Wildcarders is they're obviously looking for an edge, right? They want to get ahead of everyone that's not Wildcarding. So they're looking outside the box. And they're forgetting about players with slightly poorer fixtures. It doesn't mean those players are awful for the rest of the season. And they might still do well. Martinez, Bamford, Rafinha are definitely the 3 players that spring to mind. So just because a wildcarder is getting rid of them doesn't mean that you have to. Yes, I don't think the fixtures are that great for the rest of the season, but as with anything with FPL, there's management of your team, and that includes prioritising transfers, and at this point in time, it might not be Martinez. So that's it for this one. Lots covered. Hopefully it was useful. If it was, please do give it a like and hit subscribe if you're new around here. I have team selection tomorrow and all the usual stuff after that. And of course, if you haven't already checked out Patreon, link in the description below for that as well. Everybody that signs up goes up on the Patreon wall. We're close to 300, which is awesome. So thank you to everyone for their support. And if you want to check it out, there's a link in the description below. Big shout out to Vlad C, who has signed up since the last video as well. I hope all your wildcard draft tinkering is going well. If you've got any questions, leave them below. I'll try and get back to as many as possible. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow from a team selection video where I've got Tierney to deal with, Antonio to deal with, 2 Man City players. I'm probably not free hitting the 33, and I've only got 1 Liverpool. It's going to be interesting. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, but it'll be out tomorrow. Until then, I'll see you soon.